Welcome to the Appraisal Subcommittee's FY24 Notice of Funding Availability Kickoff Webinar for the State Appraiser Regulatory Agencies Support or SARAS grant. This grant opportunity is only eligible to the states. When we say states, we mean the 50 U.S. states, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, and the United States Virgin Islands. The entity in the state that can apply is the State Appraiser Certifying and Licensing Agency, as defined in Title 11, subject to oversight by the ASC and with the jurisdiction for 1. Credentialing and supervising certified and licensed real estate appraisers eligible to perform appraisals for federally related transactions as defined in Title 11, and or 2, registering and supervising AMCs. During this kickoff, we will go over SARA's program objectives and priorities, this year's funding levels, deadlines and key considerations, specific details on projects that would include either a practicum or a PARIA project, how to submit your applications, and what kind of technical assistance and resources are available as you develop your applications. The grant's program objectives and priorities are detailed in the NOFA starting on page 2. As a reminder, Title 11 authorizes the Appraisal Subcommittee to make grants available to states. The objective of this funding is to aid the states to improve the state real estate appraiser regulatory framework. For this fiscal year, our grant priorities include reducing barriers to entry into the real estate appraiser profession, improving the state real estate appraiser and AMC complaint and or enforcement process, improving data submissions to the National Registry, staff development that ensures effective supervision of the activities of state certified and licensed appraisers, and improving the state's overall process or infrastructure to ensure compliance with Title 11 requirements. Let's take a look at the priorities. In reducing barriers to entry into the real estate appraiser profession, few examples of projects that we would support are to states with a shortage of appraisers in rural, tribal lands or other underserved markets, submitting a project to assist aspiring appraisers in fulfilling the required education and experience to become a licensed or certified appraiser. The application should include supportable data that substantiate the shortage of appraisers. Projects that address diversity and partnerships with institutions of higher education are highly encouraged. Another projects are states with requirements that go above the minimum requirements set by the AQB as identified in the state level dashboard developed by the Interagency Task Force on Property Appraisal and Valuation Equity, or PAVE, may submit projects for the state to assess, review, and revise their additional requirements. Under the Improving State Real Estate Appraiser and AMC complaint and or enforcement process, some projects for consideration could be improving the complaint intake process for complaints alleging appraisal bias, or using technology to improve investigatory process for complaints against state certified and licensed appraisers and registered AMCs. Or you could have a project that would help address or reduce the number of complaint backlog a state may have or the time it takes to resolve the complaints. Those are all eligible projects under this priority. For the priority that addresses improving data submissions to the National Registry, this is just looking to improve the process of how the state would submit data on state certified and licensed appraisers and registered AMCs to the National Registry. Examples could include transitioning to the use of the Application Programming Interface or API, or implementing unique identifier or UID for appraisers. For the priority that addresses staff development that ensures effective supervision of the activities of state certified and licensed appraisers, some examples of those projects could be participation in trainings and conferences that increases the professional competency in managing and regulating state appraisers and AMC programs. Please note that proposals must include the name of the training or conference, the vendor or the supplier of that training, and the dates of the event. Projects that support participation to trainings and conferences should also include the title and position of the individual seeking funding and the benefit to the state for that individual's participation in the training should be included in the application. Please note that for conferences, symposiums, or seminars, participation is limited to no more than 3 staff and or board members participating at the same conference. And for our last priority, improving the state's overall process or infrastructure to ensure compliance with Title XI requirements. This is just anything that the state may have an innovative idea of how to address this. Some examples could be a process to request for temporary practice permits within 5 business days of receipt of a completed application, or developing a remedial education course to address the most common practice violations. With this priority, we just ask that the project has to tie into how the state is using this project to ensure compliance with Title XI requirements. Now for funding levels, the NOFA starts to talk about this on page 4. For FY24, we have a little bit over $2 million, so $2,025,000 is available nationwide to fund this year. States can request up to $120,000 per year for 3 years, since this is a 3-year period of performance. So the max grant for all 3 years would be a total of $360,000. Please note that if you are applying for this opportunity, this will be 100% federal share. There would be no requirement of you to match the grant, or no state match is required if you are applying this year, and that would carry over to the full 3-year period of performance. No cost share would be required. Now on to deadlines and key considerations. This starts on page 5 of the NOFA. We have 2 rounds this year for grants. The first deadline will be June 3rd, 2024, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and September 4th, 2024, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So again, 2 rounds. If you can't make it to the June 3rd deadline, you have another opportunity to submit an application on September 4th. As stated before, the period of performance, or POP, is for 36 months. The state will indicate their desired start and end date in the application, so you have an opportunity to indicate the start date of the grant that you would like. Applications will only be accepted by applicants with a current and active unique entity identifier, or UEI. This replaces the DUNS number. Your UEI is obtained from SANS.gov. The NOFA does go into detail starting on page 6 of how you get that if you do not have one already. Having a UEI is a federal requirement of all grants, not just the ASC, all grants and contracts with the federal government. The entity has to have a UEI. Also in the NOFA, starting on page 9, we list all allowable and unallowable costs to the grant. Very important for you to review that so you understand what costs we will pay for and what we will not. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the grants office, and that information will be provided at the end of this presentation. For those states that are looking for this grant opportunity to fund a practicum course and or a career project for their state, the NOFA goes over the explicit criteria. Starting on page 11 of the NOFA, we go over what we are looking for in your grant application in funding either of these projects. The state must have a verifiable shortage of appraisers. The application should include statement of need, objectives and measurable accomplishments, methodology plan, and an evaluation plan. The NOFA goes into greater detail of what each of those concepts mean and what we're looking for. So please take a look at that. And if you have questions, you can reach out to the grants office. Again, our information will be at the end of the presentation. Please be aware that if your state is submitting a PAREA project, the state must first ensure that its proposed program complies with the requirements established by the AQB. That's very important. Now on to submitting the application. You can refer to page 7 of the NOFA, where we have links of the actual forms that you would need to fill out. It is on our website. Once those forms are completed, it would be emailed to our inbox, grants@asc.gov, and in the subject line, your subject should read FY24 SARS application. Again, applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on June 3rd of 2024 or September 4th, 2024. Those are our two deadlines under this grant announcement. Now I'd like to provide you with some resources for technical assistance or aids as you work towards completing your application. First is the ASC Grants Handbook, which has been recently revised. It goes over the entire grant life cycle of how we manage grants here at the ASC, from pre-award, award, post-award to closeout. So that's a helpful tool in understanding how we manage our grant program. Also have a link to the initial application forms and instructions on each of those forms so that you could review, also on our website. We have a link to the NOFA itself. So if you need that, it is there, which additional information, more detailed information of what we discussed today. I've also provided you with our contact information for the Grants Management Office. If you have any questions or need some clarification of what was heard today, I encourage you to send us an email at grants@asc.gov. That is our preferred method of communication. But we also have a telephone number if that works better for you. We are working on a how to complete the ASC grant application webinar that will be posted to the website in March, and that will be going through each of the forms. How do you fill it out line by line? How do you fill out the budget? How do you do your budget narrative? How do you do your statement of work? So that should be posted shortly. And lastly, want to offer you, if you'd like to schedule your own individual training session or would like one-on-one meeting on going over your questions, that's also available to you. Just send us an email making that request and we can get that scheduled. That concludes our kickoff meeting for the SARAS grant. I'd like to thank you for your attendance and please reach out if you have any questions. Take care.